There's a particular kind of quiet that settles over a backyard in summer. Not silence, but the kind of stillness that only exists when everything you were once afraid of has already happened. And somehow, it turned out fine. I'm sitting here watching my children play. The grass is warm, the air smells like flowers and something close to peace. And I'm thinking about the afternoon, years ago, when a doctor smiled at me and changed everything I thought I knew about my own life. I was 30 years old, first pregnancy, routine visit. I had a plan. My name is Jessica. I grew up in rural Texas, one of 6 children, in a house where the refrigerator was sometimes more hope than food. My father drove trucks for a living. My mother managed the rest. By the time I was 12, I had already learned how to quiet a crying baby, stretch a meal, and pretend I wasn't exhausted. I promised myself one thing. My life would be different. One child, steady, controlled, intentional. So when Dr. Thompson adjusted the ultrasound wand, smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're expecting twins," I didn't feel joy. I felt the walls move. I shook my head. I sobbed. My husband Ryan reached for my hand and I pulled it away. Not because I didn't love him, but because the plan, the careful, deliberate, hard-won plan, had just quietly dissolved. On the drive home, the rain blurred Portland into gray shapes outside the window. Ryan kept one hand on the wheel and one on my knee. He didn't say much. He understood, I think, that this was not a moment for words. What no one tells you about fear is how quickly it can become something else. The twins, Ethan and Lucas, arrived healthy. And in the first moment I held them, both of them, I understood something I hadn't known how to believe before. Love does not divide, it multiplies. That realization didn't come loudly. It arrived slowly, over sleepless weeks, in the weight of a child against your shoulder at 3 a.m., in the way Ryan would build a rocking cradle in the garage on his days off, sawdust on his jeans, completely absorbed. I had married a man who kept his word quietly. He didn't announce his commitment. He just showed up, again and again, until showing up was simply who he was. And for a while, that was enough. That was everything. Across the street lived a little boy named Jake. He was small for his age. His clothes were always slightly too big. He followed his parents like a shadow, and his parents, well, there were nights they came home loud. There were afternoons he played alone in the yard for hours. I noticed him the way you notice something that quietly reminds you of yourself. One cold afternoon, I found him huddled outside an abandoned house, soaked through, holding a teddy bear. He looked up at me with those enormous, careful eyes and said, "Daddy's mad. Mommy's mad." I took his hand. I brought him home. I made him hot cocoa. Ryan came home and found a neighbor's child sitting in our kitchen, wrapped in a towel. He looked at me with that expression, the one that meant, "Jessica, this is complicated." He was right. It was. But complicated isn't the same as wrong. A few weeks later, Jake's parents were killed in a car accident. I didn't pause long. I knew what I had to do. The adoption process was not romantic. It was forms and background checks and home inspections and courtrooms and waiting. Long stretches of waiting, while Jake's extended family circled the estate and declined to take him in. They wanted the house. They wanted the assets. They did not want the boy. So we stood before a judge on a quiet afternoon in a small courtroom. Are you prepared to assume full responsibility for this child, financially, emotionally, legally, as though he were born to you? I said yes. Ryan said yes. The gavel came down. That evening we showed Jake his new room. He looked at the toys, the books, the space that was entirely his. Then he looked up at us and asked, softly, almost shyly, "Can I say hi to my brothers?" We walked him to the nursery. He tiptoed to the cribs and whispered hello. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. A few months after Jake's adoption was finalized, I found out I was pregnant again. I waited a long time before telling Ryan. I rehearsed the conversation. I prepared for his exhaustion, his worry. Instead, when I finally said the words, his face opened into something I can only describe as quiet joy. "Our family is growing," he said. "It's going to be amazing." And it was. Amelia arrived on a warm spring morning. She grew into a girl with her brother's stubbornness and her father's calm. Jake, 9 years old now, sits with her in the backyard and tries to braid her hair. The twins run circles around them both. I look at this, all of it, and I think about the woman who sat in that examination room and shook her head and said no. She wasn't wrong to be afraid. She just didn't know yet what was waiting on the other side of fear. I had spent years protecting myself from the chaos of too much love, and in the end, love is exactly what found me. In pairs, in a small boy with a teddy bear, in a husband who never once stopped showing up. The backyard is golden now. The sun is going down. I lean against Ryan's shoulder, and I don't say anything. Some things don't need words. They just need time.